Okay, so welcome everyone to this mini symposium of Beth Mardutho's Digital Humanities Summer Program. So a bit about the program. Beth Mardutho hosts a number of students, usually graduates. Sometimes we have undergrads uh, and postdocs who do fellowships in the digital humanities. They basically work on various projects. So you learn by getting your hand dirty. And the projects that you work on are actual life projects. That means they end up being published as one of the Beth Mardutho or partners portals. So this is a program we've been doing for a couple of years, and we are quite happy about it. So this is the first time we do our mini symposium kind of in public or semi-public. Usually when the students used to come to Beth Mardutho, we sit in the room ourselves and we give presentations. But now that it is on Zoom, we thought we will open it and we will make a webinar out of it. So I'm going to start by introducing our speakers, and at the same time, I will be thanking the supporters because this fellowship program is supported uh, by a number of people who care about the Syriac language. So first, I would like to thank the Herman and Mary K. Seibel Foundation for providing support for the fellowship program in general throughout the year. For the summer, I will be introducing now the fellows and with that the fellowships they hold. So our first speaker is Maroon El Hukayem from Duke University. He holds the Dr. Sohail and Mrs. Luna's Zavaro Fellowship. Maroon is at Duke, but physically in Lebanon, and we were very happy to see him a couple of weeks ago when Afram and I were in Lebanon. And I'm just going to go through all the speakers and introduce them now, and then Shelby will call upon them to start one by one. Then he will be followed by Justinian Mandrella, who holds the Mr. Malak Yunan and the late Dr. Evelyne Yunan Fellowship. He is a PhD student at Georg August Universität in Göttingen. So we have an international team here. And then our third speaker is local. In addition to the fellowship program, also Beth Mardutho hosts students from Princeton Theological Seminary who do their field education with Beth Mardutho. So Ian from PTS is doing a master's degree and is part of that field education program. Then we have an undergraduate student, Fadi Humsi, who holds the Dr. Khalid and Mrs. Amira Dinno Fellowship. He is a seminarian at St. Ephraim Seminary in Ma'arrat Saidnaya. He is in Homs or Hama, I can't recall now, but unfortunately, there is no internet connection there. So he will be represented today by his supervisor, Ephraim. And then we have Yanir Marmour, who holds the Dr. Nabil and Mrs. Jennifer Aydin Fellowship. He's a double major bachelor's degree student at Tel Aviv University in computer science and Talmud, including Syriac studies, and he is pursuing a master's degree in Talmud. And then we have Anton Fleischner, who holds the Edward Y. Hanoush Memorial Fellowship in the Digital Humanities. It is sponsored by Dr. Peter and Dr. Gretchen Hanoush. He is a math and computer science teacher in Beverly, Massachusetts, an enthusiast of Syriac, and he will be talking about some of the computing program he's working on. And before we move to them, I also would like to introduce and thank our supervisors. when the program began, it was a one-man show, and it was too hectic to run it and supervise everybody. And now we are thankfully in a position where I don't have to do anything. So we have usually from our fellows, we usually have some who remain with us at Beth Mardutho. They enter the Beth Mardutho black hole, uh, and they serve as supervisors in the following years. So Joshua Hood is our current Seibel fellow. He is supervising OCR projects. Shelby Loster, she is our digital humanities projects coordinator, works on syntho metadata and many other things. Ephraim Ishaq from Graz is supervising liturgical projects. And Jess Childs, she's a TEI, becoming a TEI specialist. She is supervising TEI in XML and work on the Hugoye project. And then Slavo has many hats. He's not wearing any now physically, but Slavo has many hats, and he is our computational linguistics specialist. Most people are humanists. Everybody else is a humanist. Slavo is a computer scientist. Well, Anton is a computer scientist, I guess. But Slavo is a computer scientist and a humanist at the same time, and a linguist. So, so that's our last of our supervisors. So now we will go down to the presentations, and Shelby can call upon folks. Just for everybody to know, we have about 13 attendees. I would like to welcome all the attendees: Ammar, Atur, Baha, David, Demson, Elena, Gekam, Gregory, Jennifer, JY, Lisa, Mor Polikarpos, and Sargon Hasso. So thank you everyone for joining. And Joss just joined us. I introduced her. She is our XML TEI supervisor for Hugoye projects. So go ahead, Shelby.
Hi, thank you. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat and we will answer all the questions at the end of all of the presentations. So just go ahead and add them in as you think of them, and then we'll go through the list later. So I'd like to introduce Maroon, and he is going to present on Syriac Digital Humanities, OCR.
Thanks, Shelby. I'm just going to share my screen. Can everyone see the PowerPoint? Okay, great. So hello, everyone. My name is Maroon Al-Hugoye. I am a second-year PhD student at Duke University in the Early Christianity track. I will be presenting on OCR, and more specifically on the segmentation process. My interest in Syriac Digital Humanities is both personal and academic. As George already said, I'm from Lebanon. And as far as my research interests, I work mostly on language and linguistics, and language and religious identity for Arabic Christian communities after Islam. I'm going to first say a few words about the software that we use for OCR, and then how segmentation works and some of the difficulties that we face when we're working with OCR and segmentation.
Maroon? Maroon,
yeah.
may I interrupt 1 second? Do you think you could put it on presenter mode where we can see all your notes and your slides coming?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I had the same problem in Zoom before. There you go.
That's what I did.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so the software that we use is eScriptorium. So the first step is to upload the text. As you can see here, you can see the text uploaded, and then we have to select the pages and both segment it first and then transcribe it. So what is segmentation? Segmentation is basically, like the title implies, segmenting the text into different segments and delineating the parts that should be transcribed and the parts that shouldn't. So the parts that you can see in pink, main text, and what should be transcribed. So we have text in different scripts, as you can see. We have Syriac, we have Certo, and the other parts are parts that should not be transcribed, but should be segmented. So we have the curricular apparatus, which might include Syriac. We have everything that is in a foreign language. And this then helps the software select the lines in the text and set up masks around it that allows it to transcribe it into a text. So here we have an example of a text that has been transcribed, that has been segmented, sorry, but it hasn't been manually fixed. So as you can see on the left side, the text has been segmented through the model that we have on eScriptorium. And while it's mostly correct, we still have a few issues that might arise in the segmentation. So as you can see here, the segments are kind of on top of each other. Here, this should be in blue, it's in purple, which means that it's foreign, while it's actually critical apparatus. And here, everything is fixed manually, but I included this because sometimes the critical apparatus is included in the main text, which then when we transcribe the text is transcribed while it shouldn't because it's not part of the main text. So once we have the segmentation done, this is what we get on the pages that have been segmented. Besides the parts that have been delineated, the text is then highlighted through what we call masks. And each line is, we have a line in purple that gets on every line of the text. And the text is then selected, and it allows the software, once we do the transcription, to transcribe the text. So for the presentation, I picked a book that I worked on, which is the Malankara prayer book from the Malankara Church in India. And the reason I chose this text, as you will see in the next few slides, is because it presents a lot of peculiarities that you can't find in other texts. So for example, when we look closely at one of the pages, we have a word that appears in a different language, which is Malayalam, which is an Indian language. And sometimes the model will include this part of the text as Syriac and include it in the lines and the masks. And what happens in that case, as you can see here, the text is then transcribed because the masks have not been put properly on just the Syriac text. And then in that case, what we would have to do is drag the line back, and then the software automatically reselects the parts of the text that are included in the purple line. But in some cases, like the case below, words in other languages are included in the middle of a sentence in Syriac. And sometimes the masks do not capture the text fully. So in that case, what we would have to do is drag the masks and manually fix them in order to select just the Syriac, which would then extract the Syriac and make the transcription correct without including words that aren't in Syriac. Here I just circled another part because, as you can see in this book, the font is not the usual font we see in Certo. So we also have a few mistakes with the consonants. And I will talk more about this in the next few slides. And here we have another issue that sometimes comes up when we have the masks. So it might appear innocent at first, but when we have a mask that is larger than the text, it ends up creating a number of mistakes as well in the transcription because it does not capture the words exactly. And another thing that we have here is the footnotes that appear in the middle of a text, which then here, for example, are transcribed as a pay noon. And if we looked at the first part, the aleph is without a noon, and then there's a yud added to the first word where it shouldn't be. So basically what we'd have to do is try and check each line by line and fix the masks so it is capturing the text exactly as it is. And another issue that comes up, and this one is kind of expected, is with the vowels, and the dots, punctuation. So as you can see here, the masks as well did not capture the vowels, and then here they did, but only the siame appears in the transcription. And so in these cases, we would also have to drag the mask and make sure that it does include all the vowels and all the letters properly. We still have some mistakes that come up even if everything is captured correctly, because the alamad is easily mistaken for a noon, or the dot is taken as a yod. So these are some of the mistakes that come up, or the complications that come up in segmenting a text and doing the OCR. It's mostly attention to detail and trying to make sure that everything is captured in the masks or the polygons, so then that they would be transcribed. So here you can see the final product that we get. On the left side, we have the text or the image itself, with all the masks that appear on the text, and the lines are numbered correctly. In some rare instances, the lines are numbered incorrectly, so you get the second line on the third line instead of being like it is on the text. And the view that we have on eScriptorium, that is on the right side, allows us to rearrange the lines in the order that they appear in the text. So then we would make sure that everything comes up the way it is in the text. And the one in the middle is for editing the transcription, but Justinian will talk more about that. And the last thing that I wanted to say is that, so I work mostly with texts, both Arabic and Syriac. And what I have been able to learn is that with OCR, the beginning is a bit rough, but the more you put in work in the beginning in the segmentation process and make sure that everything is captured correctly and everything is marked correctly, the less you would have to do in the segmentation part. And so what I've been able to do is learn a lot on how to manipulate the text so that I can easily deal with it later and be able to extract. So what we have on the right-hand side is the final product, and then we're able to export it. So we will be able to use it and edit it the way we want. And that's been so far what I've learned with OCR, and I think that's it. Thank you. I will leave it to Justinian to talk about the transcription process.
Thank you, Madhu. So we'll move on to Justinian, and his presentation is called Transcription Process with eScriptorium.
Thank you, Shelby. I will try to share my screen also. I hope you can hear me well.
Maroon, you need to stop sharing. There we go.
Okay, so this is okay. So the title of my presentation is, as you've heard, the transcription process in eScriptorium, and I hope you can see it, yeah, properly now. So my presentation is structured in three parts. At first, I will try to make a practical demonstration of how it works and to see how it looks like to work in the eScriptorium, how it's like to transcribe the text in this system. In the second part, I will try to systematize a few issues that may appear, or the most common issues and problems and some of the challenges that may appear in the process of transcribing the text. And at the end, I will say a few words about my personal experience of working with text and learning and applying what I've learned in the transcription process. I will do it pretty old school, going directly to the eScriptorium website. I hope you can see it well enough. So all we have to do when you have a text, I will continue after the segmentation process that Maroon showed you. So all you have to do, you have here the images. You can see the images uploaded here. And I will try to show you how it's, yeah.
Justinian, I think you're only sharing the PowerPoint. You may want to share the entire screen, or stop sharing and then share your website, your browser.
I hope I know how to do it.
Yeah, so stop sharing and then start sharing again. And instead of picking your PowerPoint, just pick your.
I think I got it.
Okay.
Hopefully. Yes. Sorry for that. So I think we're now in the eScriptorium website. So here we have the images uploaded, and I will try to show you how it is to run the transcription process after the segmentation that Maroon showed you. So all you have to do is to press the transcribe button and select the modal, in our case, the Certo modal. That shows you that the process is being run. And what's also important, here we have the sign that the segmentation has been successfully done. Now we can go to edit the text, and we have here more options. We can see on the left side, you can see the original text, the original image. On the right side is the transcription, which is being done by eScriptorium. We have some other options also here in this part of the website, and here is, for instance, we can activate some other panels. So if you want to see specifically the transcription, the transcribed text, it's here on the right side, or only the original image of the Syriac text. But I will restrain my presentation to these two panels so that you can see more of it. The next step is to select every row, every line, to correct the text which is has been transcribed by the program. If we don't see any problem, here we go. We should press enter and go navigate to the next lines. And then it's pretty easy to edit the text. So until now, there's no error here or mistake that has been done by the program. Now, in this line, you can see at the end of the line, there is a mistake. The system recognizes a yod instead of a nun, and what we have to do now, it's actually to enter the right character.
Herman.
Sorry?
Oh, sorry. I didn't realize I was still.
Okay, so in this line, it's also another mistake. It's also a nun. We have to be careful about the diacritical dots, as in this case. You can see here another mistake. So basically, the punctuation, it's also an issue that should be corrected, as in this case here, or here. I wanted just to show you how does it work. There's also yes, here, for instance, we have another mistake. It should be Simkat Yod and Dalet. What's very helpful also, you can, if you're not familiarized with a keyboard layout, you have here the virtual keyboard, and you can enter them. Yes, but it is not, sorry, it's not functioning while presenting. It seems so. So basically, this is what you have to do when you're working in eScriptorium. And I will go back to my presentation now. Yes. So in the second part, as I said, I tried to systematize some of the issues that may appear during the transcription process. And first of them, I think it's the fact that the system sometimes confuses characters. I've selected here some examples for this. Some of the most often, the things that occur most often during the transcription process. One of them is the thing that it confuses bet with cough, for instance. And we have here an example in this image where the bet should be. There is a cough in the automatical transcription. The next example, it's the shin, which is detected as a pe. And you can see here the shin with the siame, and it is being detected as a pe with siame. And the third one, which is can be seen pretty often, it's the dalat with siame, and often it's being confounded with resh with siame, as in this image here. It may be also maybe an issue of segmentation that you can it couldn't cover also the dot of the dalat. So this is basically the result of this confusion. Sorry. Another problem, another very big problem, can be sometimes the fact that the system doesn't recognize all the time the missing the vowels. And I selected here two examples of how should it look like. We have in both cases two vowels, and in both cases one of them is missing in the automatical transcription process. The next issue that may appear is that of the transcription errors due to poor segmentation. As Maroon said and showed you, you have to be really careful about the segmentation process. But if you miss some points like this, when the segmentation covers only half of the word, let's say, there can appear some issues like this. So the system detects only half of the word of the characters, and that may lead to transcription errors. So there should be a noon, for instance, and it's recognized only as a yod, and should be also a full stop, as you see, and a break, and then the other characters. So it's the same case here on the right side in the other example. So the transcription in this word, it's not really accurate, let's say. The problem of the final noon, it's another problem. The automatical segmentation doesn't seem to catch it all the time, and it's a pretty often mistake that you can see in the texts, that the final noon, it's only covered only a part of it, so it's detected as a full stop, as a dot. Another issue are the transcription errors due to print defects in the original text. They are not so often, but some problems like this in the original text in the print may lead to issues like this. So we have here the he, and because of this small gap here, the transcription program detects it as a zayin and a waw, for instance. Another problem may be the estrangela passages in the Certo texts. And I've selected here an example which clearly shows you how does it happen with part of extrangular texts and the Certo part of this line. The Certo, it's being transcribed really accurate, but you can see that it's not the case for the strangular part. Here it should be, for instance, a sheen. Here it should be a lamad instead of the nun, and so on. But I should say also that it's pretty normal, because the model we use, it's a Certo. It's a Certo model. It's a model for Certo texts, and it's pretty normal that the accuracy it's not the same as in the Certo text for strangular texts or passages. Another smaller problem, not really for the Syriac texts, but it may also appear. It's the one of the page numbers that may not be detected all the time very accurately, as in this example. So for the final part of my presentation, I would like to say something about my personal experience transcribing Syriac texts. It's also, I should say that it was a wonderful experience being immersed in this language that we all love. I think all the people here love. And for me, it was not a mechanical work, despite maybe some of my expectations, because inevitably, while correcting the texts, you're also receiving some of the information of the text, and it's a very enriching experience, I would say. You get in touch with older or newer texts from different periods, and it's a very interesting. You are in the situation of spotting very useful information, and this is very special for me. But I have to say also that this doesn't remain only a personal or a spiritual, let's say, satisfaction. I have achieved here a real set of skills, and they are extremely helpful for me and for my studies. And here you can see the real proof, I would say. On the left side, it's a manuscript, and this is the manuscript that I'm working on for my PhD studies. It has never been published or edited or even translated. So besides my work of analyzing the content and the manuscript, I'm planning to do a text edition and a translation of this text. That will be the first modern translation. So that's why what I've learned during the past weeks, it's very helpful for me, and will ease a lot my work for my studies, in my studies. I guess this is everything for my presentation. Thank you very much, and we're waiting for your questions in the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Justinian. You can stop sharing your screen, please. I apologize for interrupting you. I didn't realize my sound was on. So we'll hear next from Ian, and his presentation is called TEI, XML, and Metadata.
Thank you, Shelby. I will be sharing this side of my screen. Hopefully it works. Can you all hear me very well? Okay. You see a blue screen, hopefully. Perfect. All right. Excellent. Let me really quickly do this. All right. So hello, welcome. As stated, my name is Ian Olala. I am from Princeton Theological Seminary. I am going into my third year of studies. And as George mentioned, I'm doing this internship as part of my field education. So I'm required to do 2 field ed placements, and this is been my first one, and it's been a really great time so far. And I'm going to dive in a little bit into some TEI XML, and metadata. So this is what I have been working on this summer. It should be no surprise that I was very unfamiliar with these words and these concepts when I first entered. And so I'm going to take you a little bit through that process, define some of our terms, and then walk you through a few things of what I've been doing in this internship. So let's begin discussing about TEI. So what in the world is TEI? This is a question that I asked myself whenever I first entered. On the first day when we had our weekly meeting, someone mentioned TEI, XML, all these different things, and I was just a little bit lost. So throughout this summer, I've learned what this is, so I want to take you through what this is. TEI stands for the Text Encoding Initiative, and it was created in 1987, and it was created to develop and maintain a standard for the representation of text in a digital form. So what that basically means, TEI, this text encoding initiative, it's basically a set of guidelines that help us and specify encoding methods for machine readable text, chiefly in the humanities, social sciences, and linguistics. So it's perfectly tailored for work that we do at Beth Mardutho because we work in the humanities, the social sciences, and primarily with linguistics, as we've been seeing today. And according to the website, since 1994, these guidelines have been widely used by libraries, museums, publishers, individual scholars to present texts for online research, teaching, and preservation. So as you can see, this research, teaching, and preservation, these three aspects are really well tailored and well used for our work here. Basically, it's the way in which the computer can read a text. And so that is basically what I've understood it to be. And it has some helpful things that it can do, which make it really useful. So it can denote paragraphs, line breaks, pagination, italics, bold, underlined text, basically anything that you would find within a text that would vary. So basically, it's a rule set in which the encoding language operates. And so with any rule set, you have different things that it can do. So here's an example from their website. They're analyzing some prose here. So with these prose, you can identify some clauses. So if you have someone who's encoding, maybe it's the author, maybe it's someone who wants to upload it to the internet, and they want to specify that, okay, well, I have some clauses and I want to make sure that people know where they are. And you can do such with TEI. And you also have verse tags. So this is a sonnet, it's a quatrain. You can specify these types of things, and it makes it very, very specific. So if you put a lot of effort into identifying these types of things, it makes it a lot easier for the computer to digest it, and therefore for other people to use it. And so these things that you see here, and they go on for quite some time with a different variety, makes it very flexible, makes these things very, very flexible, and to have a large variety of documents that we can analyze. So it's really, really useful. So as I said, TEI, it's kind of a rule set. So if you imagine, if you have a soccer game, TEI would be like the referee. So this referee knows the rules, has set out and laid out the rules, but also is kind of constraining and making sure that people don't go out of line and calling those types of things. And TEI does this. It will notate for you whenever there's something wrong, something will look a little bit incorrect. And with any game, any type of thing that you're working on, you have the referee, but you also have the players. And so for us, the players can sometimes be the text themselves that we're working with, or the software. So it becomes TEI's job to kind of constrain these types of things and to work out. And whenever I first entered, and on my first day, the first thing that I saw was this. And I thought to myself, oh no, like I have no idea what I'm looking at. And I was just blown away. I didn't know what I was looking at, you know, all these types of things. It reminded me of a coding class that I had taken in high school. And it was a little bit overwhelming at first. But through just more and more exposure, it's become a lot easier to break these things down. And so I will do that. But basically what you just saw is XML, the extensible markup language, which if TEI is the rule set that uses a language, XML is the language that the computer uses. So it's a language for, obviously, for transmitting data, which is what a language is. And it's designed to be readable by humans and computers, which makes it really useful, because if it was just able to be read by a computer, it would be of no use to us. So the thing that XML utilizes, which are extremely important, are what's called tags. So it's identified by these things. I don't know, in math, they're the greater than and less than. They're like sideways carrots. So you have tags, and they identify tags. So you can have a start tag, which will identify the beginning of a section. And then with the start tag, you must have an end tag to identify the end of that section. So between the start and the end tag, you can have different types of things. So you have a paragraph, let's say, or something that you need to notate that has a beginning and an ending. And then you have an empty element tag, such as a line break, a page break, something that doesn't necessarily have a specified ending, but begins at a certain point that you need to enter. So tags are the most useful thing that's included within XML. And again, this is not a course on XML. This is not a course on TEI. I'm not qualified to teach either, but this is just what I have gleaned and have learned throughout this summer. So let me take you on an average day. So let's say hypothetically you're me. What would you do? You wake up, you eat your breakfast. What are you going to do for the next? So this is going to be easy for me because I am myself. So I can just walk you through what I do every single day. So first I open up a web browser and I go to our Hugoye. We have a folders with all these different documents within. So you see we have completed XML files, which is where we put our completed things. We have PDFs, Word documents, and then the XML files. So I would click on the PDF files of all volumes, and it opens up another folder. And then we're working in volume 16, and it opens up another subfolder, which I did not show, but then it opens up into all the documents that we're working with. So we have PDFs of documents that have been scanned and that have been uploaded to this Hugoye. And so we figure out with each other what documents we're working on, what documents we aren't working on, so that way we don't overlap and do the same documents. And for instance, this day I picked H161, or pardon me, H16N1BR Walters.pdf. So then I would copy all of this text into a Word document. So this is thankfully only 4 pages long. So it's one of the shorter documents that we're working on. And like I said before, TEI and XML, you need to notate and look for different variations within the text. So you have italics, if you have bold, if you have something that's underlined, if you have footnotes, different things such as that that we need to notate and make sure that we encode so that the metadata is correct. So here I've notated all the places that there are italics and that there are footnotes, something that's a little bit different. There's pagination or what have you. And then once I've copied this all into a Word document, I make sure to keep the PDF open so that way I can see all of these different things. And then we go from there. Then we come back to this confusing thing, but it becomes a little less confusing once you realize that there are certain things and certain variations within the text that make it. So for instance, you have this between, you have a tag that specifies the beginning of the body. So this is a start tag, and you'll have an end tag that's somewhere down the line after all of this text. So this is specifying that this is now the body of your text. Now you're working, now you're going. And before this is all of the, so you have the title, the author, some of the metadata that you need to input, which I did not show here. Then you have another start tag that specifies that you're working in the English language, not necessarily in English per se, but you want to specify the alphabet. So let's say if you have something that's in Syriac, which I've come across once or twice, you want to specify that you're working in that alphabet. So let's say that if you're working in a text that's in German or if it's in French, you'll still specify EN for English, just as long as you have the alphabet that's correct, and then the computer will take care of the rest. So then you copy the rest of your text. So in the present volume, yada, yada, you do whatever that first text is. Then I like to make it a little bit I guess, more pretty for the eye, I put a space in between each of the paragraphs, just so I can see whenever I'm going back through this, if I've done something wrong, if there's text within a certain paragraph that I need to italicize and notate that for the computer, I can tell it there, and I can tell what paragraph it is. Then, as I said, we have something that we need to render in italics. So this is something that's transliterated, and it's in italics for us here. So we'd type this little formula between these two tags that will tell the computer that it needs to render it in italics and that it is in italics. So the entire summer has been me trying to figure out these types of formulas, when to put italics, identifying those types of things, and going from there and applying it to each of these different situations. And also, as you'll note, there's a footnote here as well, but it also includes italics. So putting everything that I've learned from this summer into practice, you need to include the footnote and however you need to render it there, but you also need to put the italics in. So it becomes, you sort of stack things on top of each other. And after that, it becomes as simple as copy and pasting and making sure that the computer has not messed up anything when you've copied it into the Word document. And from there, this becomes a whole lot less intimidating, certainly. So from beginning to end of this internship, I've definitely learned some skills, especially with TEI XML metadata. And so this has become a lot more readable. So I've been able to work on these documents and have gained this type of knowledge set that will help me into the future. So to summarize, TEI and XML, kind of combine them there, they help us so that we might help others. So they're useful tools. TEI is the rule set, XML is the language that we can utilize to preserve these types of documents for the future and further digitization. There's one thing about scanning a document and making it a PDF, but it becomes a whole lot more useful when you're able to search through it and analyze it a little bit more thoroughly. So long days of me staring at a computer screen with eye strain and whatever have you, it seems worth it to be able to contribute to this library, to Hugoye, and to the work going on at Beth Mardutho. And all these documents, as George said, they're being added to an already vast library and gigantic resources that Beth Mardutho has available. And we're preserving text through further digitization, which is really useful in today's day and age, making text more accessible, making texts furtherly digitized as well. And also just personally, although I've had some skills in digital humanities before entering, this was definitely a little outside of my comfort zone. And they say that there's no growth that can happen when you're comfortable. So I've certainly made some progress with that. And just encountering, I was speaking with my advisor, Joss, who is here today, about just the number of texts that we get to read on a daily basis. And we're exposed to those types of things that we wouldn't be otherwise. So I'm really thankful for that. Yeah, so if you have any questions, any comments, any comments about my bow tie, you can just tell me about that in the comments at the very end. And thank you so much. And I will stop sharing my screen, hopefully.
Thank you, Ian. Okay, our next presenter is Fadi, but he, as we said at the beginning, his internet is not happening for him. So his supervisor will actually present for him. So we'll hear from Ephraim next. Ephraim, you're on mute.
Yes, is this fine? And do you see the slides? Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much for the nice introduction. And as Shelby mentioned, that I'm presenting my student Fadi Homsi. Unfortunately, because of the terrible internet connection in Syria, something that we would not wonder He cannot speak for us today to present our project on encoding the Syriac liturgical text of Book of Shemo. Before I start, I would like to thank Ian for the wonderful and excellent presentation, and this makes my task easier since he wonderfully presented what TI means. And as we heard from him, thankfully, we are trying to transcribe and encode according to the TI standard the book of Shemo. So what does it mean, the book of Shemo? It might sound for maybe some of you kind of like TI for Ian. So the word of liturgy, it could be also a complicated issue similar to TI and other digital humanities things. So for the presentation, Fadi and myself, we have agreed on arranging the presentations. We would speak a little introduction about what the liturgical text means, and especially the book of Shemo. And then our objective is to create a TI files for the Syriac liturgical text. We started with the book of Shemo. Then the goal is to reach gradually to the other liturgical textbooks in the Syriac tradition. We will speak about a few challenges that we have faced, and again, the gains for Fadi, some of them are personal, and of course that the benefits would be academic and ecclesiastical. We are in a work in progress, so this means that still we are at the first beginning of our long trip, but we would welcome any kind of discussions and discussions at the end. So liturgy, for those who do not know, it means literally, it's a Greek word, it means the work of the people or the service of the people, which means that it indicates to the rituality what people are praying and singing in the churches. And the liturgical time is different from our time zones. So although everyone here is from different time zone, we are in Europe, other in the Middle East, you in the States. Liturgy also, it has its own zones. So we have the liturgical hours. We start the day from the sunset. For example, here in Austria, it's already the sunset, it's the evening, and that's why today it is Tuesday. Now we are liturgically speaking, it's already Tuesday. And then it follows the old Roman time zones, and that's why like the third hour is 9 o'clock in the morning and things like that. So this is for the one day, and then we have also the weekly cycles, and this is changing according to the different liturgical seasons in the year, so to say. And then we have the annual liturgical cycle, and this depends on the major feast days such as Easter, Christmas, and etc. So this is just a short introduction about what liturgy is. The book of Shemo, which we are working on for our project here with Beth Mardutho, is to encode the common prayers, the book of common prayers. And the word Shemo means simple. Simple because it is recited, it is prayed in the simple days. Simple days means that they don't include feast days or any major feast day. And it starts from Monday and ends with Saturday or Friday. And then it also includes some qawme. Qawmo, it's a Syriac word, it means literally standing, and it could be equivalent and synonymous to the Latin word of the nocturni or noctrona, for those who might know what does it mean. So the project of Fadi is to focus only on the book of Shemo and only on the prayers of Monday. And the idea is when we agree on certain structure, then we will have the pattern for the other days in this book, and then we can go to the other liturgical books. So this is a simple snapshot for what we are trying to do. Majorly, we have three major steps. The first thing is to transcribe the Shimo text to a Word document. Then we have to divide them according to different liturgical sections. And then we will try to deconstruct these elements, and then we try to describe every piece, and if it is available and coming from another book. For example, we have the book of Beth Gazo, as you see it here, is the major book where it includes all the hymns and the prayers, especially the Beth Gazo Rabo, or the Great Beth Gazo. Beth Gazo means the book of treasure, or from the book of Psalms, so from the Psalters or the Mazmur. And then we have, in the second step, we have the process for encoding it according to the TI standard. The challenge here, you know, that there is no attempt or serious attempts, or there is no model in the TI standard for liturgical text. So we thought that the best analogy is to compare it with the drama scheme, drama pattern, because we have people who are speaking different groups, and also according to different times. So we followed the structure of and the schema of the drama in the TI standard. And of course that it's not perfectly fitting, but now we will speak that how we try to solve some of the challenges. And then we had to think about the different encoding tools, discussing my colleague here, Dr. Thomas Klampel, and how to solve these issues concerning the attributes and the values. And then how to link it with other databases. So you can't get around of creating other databases, because these prayers, they are linked with different groups. And that's why, for example, as we will see, that the Psalters, you know, is also linked. So when we have the Psalms, then we have to link it with the other database where we have the Psalms, for example, or with the Beth Gazo. So it's the beginning of a big project, how to construct a kind of a comprehensive liturgical corpus where it could make this database possible. And then the third thing is how to test it according to the different application. For example, many of us might know the Beth Gazo application done by Melfono Georgier and his team. So maybe that we can do something similar for the book of Shimo, or at least with the software of Oxygen, where we can use the TI in perfect way. We now, right now, we do the drama model. We take the RNG, so to make sure that structurally we are following the correct structure. So the first attempt is to deconstruct the liturgical text, is to understand it. And you would not surprise to know that actually that many of the clerics, even from the Syriac church community, do not really understand what's the structure of the liturgical text. They simply recite it and sing it, and they don't even think about it. So it's just memorizing it by heart. So the first thing that what we're trying to do is to think carefully, what are these elements? For example, we have the aniono, which is like the antiphon in the liturgical terminology of the Latin tradition. And this is where we have the psalms. So we have to understand it and think about it carefully in order to apply it here. So we have to think about the following questions, that what is each piece is referring to concerning time, day, hour, etc. And then who is praying? So whether is the choir 1, choir 2, the who is presiding the liturgy, let's say a priest, bishop, people, deacon, etc. And then from where are these pieces? And as I mentioned, that maybe to create other databases in order to link them together. And then once we see that they follow the certain patterns, this will let us, this could let us understand that how to encode them according to the TI standard. For example, here we have the structure of the Monday prayers, and this is from the book of Shimo. We had to structure it according to its different sections. For example, we have the Lilio, which means the evening, and then how it is divided to different parts. And then right now we have reached only to the first two parts. So to the second qawma, how to encode it according to TI, that the antiphon and then the different liturgical elements from the book of Monday. Our starting point, as I mentioned, was to take the drama model from the TI and try to adapt it according to our liturgical model. We had some challenges, of course, because that although we have the similarity with the drama, but the difficulty that our liturgical texts, that they come from different texts, so we have to know well sources, and we have to link them together. In addition, we have the different times, as I mentioned, hour, day, week, season, and then the annual liturgical cycle. And that's why, as a solution, and after we thought about it, especially here with our TI colleague, that we have to make an analytical explanation that should be mentioned at the beginning of the TI file. So we have to let the TI file understand what do we mean by the qawma, what do we mean by all these liturgical elements concerning time and concerning liturgical pieces. And that's why that we had included at the beginning, as you will see here in front of you, that at the heading, we had put the drama model, and then we had to give some information about it. The good thing about Oxygen, this is from the Oxygen software, down it can tell you, where is the structural problems, and that's why we could solve it. So here we had to explain at the beginning, at the encoding description, that we have to create a taxonomy. And then we have to let the file understand the different categories. What's Monday, what's a Tuesday, and then etc. And what is the morning, and what is the other elements. So as I mentioned, it's still work in progress, but we're getting there. This is from the original file, which was wonderfully shared by my partner George. And this is from the heading, where we have to explain, the title, but also we have to think that with different publications, versions, and manuscripts. And then this is what I mentioned, that where we have the connection with another book, liturgical book. For example, here we have with the division, we have to explain the ana, which is the analytic, and then that what is the melody, what's the day, and what's the time, and then we have to give it from a certain reference from this. Each one is a psalm. So the good thing about the software of Oxygen, it's good for TI, but it's not good for Syriac. As you see here, the Syriac is not good enough, but at least a little bit readable. So this each one is actually a number from a psalm that we are using, and this is a bigger image. So you can have a better idea. So this is from the Hugoye, from the dwelling of the Monday in Syriac. And this is how we try to give it a certain type from the division. And then this is from the, so we give it the name, the unique name, Train Shabo. And then we try to analyze, as I mentioned, this is the Inono, or the antiphon of the evening. And these are the psalms. So we have to structure them, to analyze them according to different sections as much as possible. As you see, even with the original file shared by my phone George, that we have even to start maybe with the Shuroyo, how it is, and if it is from the Bet Gazo, to get it the correct value. The importance of the work, that as Ian mentioned, this is without a question. We are living in a digital age, especially in liturgy. We call it worship at online, or at worship. So there is no question that we have to go through a future with encoding the liturgical text to different digital possibilities, especially with DI, and that's what they call it now, the lingua franca of text encoding languages. And this will support, of course, what Beth Mardutho has been doing with Syriac Digital Humanities. And then this will give a wider possibility to include other liturgical applications. And for Fadi, who is unfortunately not with us, it has been a great experience, personal experience for him, because he had to discover this new word. And we hope that by the end of the fellowship, we can reach our objectives. Taudi Sagi, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ephraim, and thank you, Fadi. We're sorry to miss you. So we will hear next from Yanir, and his presentation is called Fundamentals of NLP in Syriac, Tokenization and Part of Speech Tagging.
Okay. Can you see my screen? Thank you. So good day or good evening here, but good morning, or good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to meet you. In the next couple of minutes, I'd like to talk about the project I'm working on as part of this summer program, supervised by Slavo. Slavo, this is a great time to thank you for all your guidance and help. So the project deals with two relatively basic tasks in the world of natural language processing in Syriac. Before we get into the details, I'd like to provide some context about this world. So when we talk about natural language processing field, we are referring to what is also known as computational linguistics in some contexts. The field's state goal is to comprehend human language. This goal is both straightforward and ambitious. Basically, it's to allow computers to understand human language. To a large extent, this is one of the most ambitious and classic goals of artificial intelligence at all. The technologies and methods that are developed in this field have a wide range of application that we encounter on a daily basis, including translation engines, automatic error correction tools, search engine, etc., and many others. It's worth noting that the difficulties that a computer faces in attempting to understand human language are very similar to the difficulties that a small child or student learning a new language faces. For example, the context of words and sentences, meaning duplication or ambiguity of expression and tone of voice in text or oral. In addition, there are some vocabulary issues that are specific to a particular field or domain. Human language also includes a variety of human errors that must be addressed. These are a few of the issues that a computer must deal with when he tries to understand human language. So before we can dive or construct a full, complete, and high-quality language understanding of computers, what we call language model in professional jargon, we must first lay a solid foundation capable of addressing simpler linguistic problems, such as morphological analysis. I concentrated in my project on morphological analysis on two levels. The first level and the small one is word level analysis, which is referred to as tokenization. And for our role, this is the term we use, but there are some other names that appear in the slide. And the nuances are irrelevant for us in this position. And the second level is to divide a sentence into words based on their function, the part of speech tagging. Now I'll present the two tasks with more details. And specifically the complexity of these tasks on Semitic languages and Syriac specifically. So when we talk about tokenization, we generally mean the task of returning the basic form of a given word. There are several sub-differences between the types of returns, like I mentioned before, but for our purposes, we will not get into this granularity. The way words are formed in Semitic languages based on roots and constructions cause complexity to tokenization that doesn't exist in languages like English and other languages. Consider, for example, two common parallel words and determine which words are derived from them. So here in the slide, we can see two words and okay. So in the left side, in English, apart from past tense, present progressive, and present simple tenses, the English basic word yields at most a few words. On the other hand, in the right hand of the side of the slide, the equivalent word in Syriac has documentation for over 100 words derived from these words only, including a wide variety of tenses, aspects, etc. All those words specifically came from Bukhwana and occurred in the New Testament corpus. The linguistic nature of Syriac and this variety present a number of difficulties in extracting and identifying the basic form of a given word. This is without mentioning the overlap between identical words formed on the basis of different words resulting from a combination of several conditions and other challenges. So this is the first task, tokenization. And the second one, the second task we work on concurrently is analyzing the parts of speech in a given sentence. That is categorizing the role of each word in a sentence as verbs, nouns, adjectives, pronouns, and so on. Despite the fact that this is a fascinating subject, I will not go into detail about the linguistic effort to create a collection of tags that will suit all languages at world, despite the many differences between them. Here on the slide, you can see the labeling of some of the words in a verse. And in the next slide here, you can see that in Semitic languages like Arabic, Hebrew, and Syriac, words can be broken down into several substrings. We call them tokens, and each token has a different syntactic grammatical role. In the presented verse from Matthew, you can see 5 consecutive words like this with multiple 2 or 3 roles in this sentence. It is also clear from this point that the two tasks, tokenization and part of speech tagging, must be combined. Without breaking down the word into the basic components, it will be difficult to label each word into a single syntactic and grammatical role. Okay, after reviewing the issues we've tackled thus far, I'll provide an update on the progress we have made in this effort. So the first and the most important step in developing any artificial intelligence model is data. Building such model requires data, preferably tracked data that used for train the artificial intelligence. So from other digital projects, we obtained a respectable collection of linguistically tagged data, but in order for the data to be computer readable, we had to make some format changes for 2 reasons. The first reason is to automatically enrich the information based on the improvements that we made. And the second goal is to arrange all of the data in a uniform and modern standard. The tag data, as it came from the other project, can be seen in the top image. This data arrived in a lesser known format. It's kind of XML that mentioned before, and the output we made can be seen shown in the image below, and this format called conlu, and this format is more modern and meets the libraries and packages and modern languages of processing that allows to make better and easier language models in Syria. Okay, and we'd like to take several actions with the time we have left in this summer. First, we need to expand the tagged and untagged data so that we can use it to create a language model, better language model, and solve this morphological analysis task and other tasks. Second, based on the tagged data we would like to use and test the values of some language models open source language models and others. There are some extra interesting AI models for languages, and we must check the performance on Syriac test also. I'll be glad to discuss this method in the next opportunity. The conclusion and the insights we'll learn from will be documented in favor of subsequent assignments in a Syriac NLP field at all. Thank you and best of luck with your projects this summer. Good evening.
Thank you, Yanir. Our last presentation will be from Anton, and his presentation is called A Syriac Verb Conjugator Towards Morphological Form Generation and Recognition.
All right, thank you, Shelby. Let's share screen. Okay. All right, can people see the presentation as a presentation? Thank you, thumbs up. So yes, I'm Anton Fleissner. I want to say thank you. Like Yanir, I was working under Slavo, and I really want to thank Slavo for all of the links and the heads up that he has given me for this project, from universal dependencies to most recently the parse args package. Also a thank you to Yanir for that presentation, because I think that was a very comprehensive, good overview of all of NLP, of which I'm doing one thing. So what am I doing? The idea behind the verb conjugator for Syriac verbs, the background motivation is for students or scholars to be going through a text and coming across a verb form. Either you don't recognize the form or the particular endings that are on it, possibly due to root weaknesses, you don't recognize the original root. So ultimately the goal is to have a morphological analyzer for verb forms that compares the form appearing in a text with a list of generated forms. So my present project is actually the program that creates those generated forms. In particular, it should take as input a verb root, which in Syriac is primarily going to be 3 consonants in a row. And then based on that, further input from the about the verb. Right now, as I have it rendered, at the end of this, I hope we can have a live demonstration. But ultimately, these things, this verb-specific information should be gleaned from a dictionary like Cedram that would have the measures or the conjugations that a verb is extant in, that it appears in addition to certain other specific information. So for instance, the inherent vowels that might appear in the perfect or the imperfect of the Ba'al. And then from that to generate sort of an array of forms, sort of like a table, but not arranged for humans to view, rather for a computer to compare the forms. So in particular, knowing what morphological dimensions we have in Syriac, we want to agree with the subject in person, number, and gender, but we want to do that across all of the forms, imperfect, perfect, imperative, infinitive, the active and passive participles, which I have called here tense, aspect, mood, for lack of a better thing to call it. Furthermore, all of that should be packaged together for each of the measures, you know, the pa'al, the ethpa'al, the pa'el, and so on. So describing that in reverse, what the output actually looks like is a giant package of upwards of 6 conjugational patterns. And unboxing each of those, what should be inside are all of the tense, aspect, mood combinations. So for instance, every extant conjugation should have a perfect, an imperfect, an imperative, etc. And then within those, there should be appropriate subject agreement for each of the persons, numbers, and genders. So this should be dependent on exactly what the tense aspect mood is. Imperatives should not exist outside the second person. Participles should exist for different genders in the first person, but they should not. They should be common forms in the perfect and the imperfect. So that's the nature of the task. So let's actually look at some examples of that. So right here, I've did not say it at first, but this is a program that I have been coding in the Python language, which is a computer language, general purpose, but I think particularly well suited for NLP, as Yenyo said, and computational linguistics, dealing with strings of text. So what we're looking at right now is the input and some of the output of this program for just a regular so-called healthy verb. So here is our good old friend Kitab, a good textbook example. And then I said, although I suppose I haven't seen this verb existing in all 6 of the attested conjugations. So I just put in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Because conjugation number 1, the pa'al, was mentioned, and that's a conjugation in which verb by verb, particular lexical items will differ in the stem vowel for the perfect and the imperfect. It asked further information in the pa'al, what vowel grade is it in the perfect, what in the imperfect, and I said a and u. So if we look over here to the right, the full output is actually quite long, and I hope to show that at the end. So I just took a small sample. Here's the beginning of the pa'al. Here's our good old friend, the perfect or the past tense, and then here is a form for the imperfect. Or sorry, here are the forms for the imperfect. For what it's worth, part of the output that I believe is desired is to have multiple forms for things like optional nonation in some of the plural forms. In the imperfect, according to a table I read, there are optional or rare forms where a feminine singular will end in yod. So as I said, here's a regular healthy verb. Let's take a look at something that's a little more perhaps demanding morphologically. So looking over here, what was requested of the program was the verb al-sleb. And I, according to Cedra, this is attested in the pa'al, the if'al, and the af'al. And I was particularly interested in the if'al because the verb root is a first sibilant root. So a couple of things should happen in the creation of the if'al that should be conditioned by that root. So let's take a look at some of the things that happen over here. First, for anything that appears in the if'al, the if'al, or the etaf'al, excuse me, the stem should be formed with a mediopassive prefix of eth. Of course, I'm encircling this, but the main part, the main change here is that because the verb has a first sibilant, a sibilant in the first position, that and the tau of the eth should actually switch positions. Furthermore, the sadi that was originally part of the root should pharyngalize, should change the tau to a tath. So instead of what would it be, eth sleb, it should be estleb. So here you can see that the eth has been added, the metathesis and the pharyngalization have all taken place. Let's see, what else has happened? For the imperfect, you'll notice that all of the olafs are missing because the imperfect, not the imperative, the infinitive and the participles all have something that would cause the olaf to drop or never to appear. So in fact, it shouldn't appear in these tables if the forms are going to be generated correctly. Also, because this is the if'al, any mediopassive conjugation should not have an attested active participle. So what should be returned here are, if forms were generated, then they would be unattested and in fact somewhat illegal forms. What should happen here is that we should see no active participle. And in fact, although I don't know this according to Cedra, other conjugations are not attested. So I included the fact here that the output included other conjugations, do not exist. So let's see. There's a regular and an irregular, a couple of examples. So thinking now about the task and also some of the things that I have discovered or learned along the way, I think that with any sort of coding initiative, there's a primary overarching a lesson to be learned about taking declarative knowledge, the fact that we have tables and tables of verb forms, and converting that into imperative knowledge, so-called algorithmicizing what Syriac speakers and scholars do every day. Really, that's the main task of any act of coding, and everything else is really sort of an instance of that. So for instance, one of the decisions that I had to make early on was committing to a particular process of verb formation. What I've done here, you could see, was to take a root, to build on top of that what I will call stems, but which are really the conjugational skeletons, and then to add to that tense aspect mood, which includes changing vowel grades, and then to add on subject agreement suffixes. I think it remains an open and lively debate whether this is what speakers do, if, for instance, the majority of verbs are not actually attested in all 6 conjugational patterns. Is that lexicalized information? I'll remain agnostic on that, just that I'll form the verbs that you tell me to. So too, exactly, and this is more a lesson for me in thinking more broadly about languages, the very real case that across many languages, you'll have a majority of regular verbs that maybe is an open class, new verbs come into the language or are generated and they follow this pattern, versus an irregular but very frequent minority, which through their frequency can afford to be irregular. Exactly how to handle those and exactly which cases to check for first is a real question of linguistics when it shifts from a, as I said, declarative to an imperative task. And I would say that the third lesson, and actually what I'm in the middle of working on now, is the balance between, as you code, as you program, setting up a code for future functionality versus having to go back and what is called refactoring, meaning recode something that you had not really anticipated before or that you just hadn't added. So for instance, an early example of this was the vowel grades. You'll notice that the program asked for a perfect vowel grade and an imperfect vowel grade. At present, because there are no vowels displayed in the conjugation pattern, this really doesn't make a great difference, except for the U grade adding a wow inside the imperfect and the imperative forms. But because this should ultimately have vowel support, I wanted to add that in early so that I would not have to go back, find where it is, undo code that had already been done. On the other hand, something that I'm having to deal with right now is handling certain types of irregularities. In particular, first nun roots in Syriac, as you may know, are they're deleted in certain environments. And if I understand from my notes correctly, in the regular Baal conjugation, the imperfect, the imperative, and the infinitive are all places where it will be deleted. But in addition, 2 entire conjugations, the afa'al and the etafa'al, are environments where the first nun will be removed, or in East Syriac will assimilate and create gemination. Exactly how to condition those, on the one hand, I could write conditions in 5 different parts of my code. That feels inefficient, and it's not really kind to the next person who takes on this project. And so what I would like to do is refactor this code so that it's phonologically conditioned. If it's in a particular environment, the nun turns into whatever the subsequent character is and creates gemination. So those are some of the personal lessons that I've had, and in addition, I think maybe questions that have been brought to the fore for me. Finally, as far as the next steps, I realize I've already sort of mentioned one of these. I'm working with root irregularities right now, so that it's not just boring old healthy verbs that we can handle. At the same time, I'm working on what are called unit tests, where the table forms are input and tested against what the program actually generates. Ultimately, I could mistype something like some of the forms in, and so the real test will be human readers who know Syriac and their forms very, very well. And down the road, further steps would be interfacing and gleaning data from Cedra as an online dictionary resource, because maybe the program should not trust me thinking what vowel grades a verb has, but rather actually get it from a lexical source. And as I said at the very beginning of this, really the ultimate goal is not just to create tables and tables of verbs, but rather to have an active verb analyzer that generates forms using the current program and then compares. Stop sharing, and how, if possible, I will just show what the behind the scenes looks like of this program. So here's our friend, the first edition of this program. So as I said, this has been written in I wrote this in Python, and I'll just come down to the particular code that generates the ef'al, the etafal, and the ef'al. It adds to the root, and then it conditionally makes replacements for the pharyngalization or the metathesis according to what the phonological environment is in the root. So we can see this in action if I can find the play button. So here's what it looks like. I'll just go with the regular verb for a bit. What maybe slick? Slick. Okay. I realize I don't know all of the forms that it occurs in, but let's just say that it occurs in the pa'al and the ef'al and the pa'al for good measure. But because I said pa'al, it does want to know what vowel grade it has. I believe it's A in the perfect, and sluk, someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's U grade. And so what's generated is tables and tables of all the forms against which can be compared a form in a given text. So that's all I have. Again, thank you to Slavo for supervising this and for giving me a lot of pointers in particular functionalities that this project will need down the road. Certainly learned a lot about Python's capabilities from it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anton. Okay, we'll thank you, Anton. Sorry if I freeze. George, you may have to jump in here. My computer's keeps freezing on me.
Yeah, it's okay. So now we can move to the QA, and maybe our listeners, our attendees have been just listening for a while. If anybody would like to ask a question, I don't know how you can they raise their hand, or
I have no idea, George. We can start.
well,
if you like, we could start with some of the ones that were posted in the chat.
go ahead. Oh, Sargon raised his. I see. He raised his hand. So I'm gonna allow you to talk, Sargon, and you ask your question.
Thank you, Anton. Hi. Yeah, I have actually. I was intrigued by the last presentation. Now, is your form conjugator or verb conjugator? I think I missed part of your intro. Is it algorithmic?
Yes, it is. You mean as opposed to using AI to glean a text and then extract forms from that?
Right.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, because when you showed the example, you were showing us, you showed us a verb, then it conjugated, it gave you basically all possible conjugations, whether those are valid or invalid, correct? Some of them may be valid, some of them are not valid, correct? Is that true? And how do you validate that if we want to, let's say, take it to the next step?
Well, I will say everything is, I will say, attestable. That is, it does not actually create forms that would be ill-formed. So for instance, with the sibilant example, it shouldn't generate, unless I programmed it wrong, it shouldn't generate ithba'el where the transposition has not occurred. So it doesn't create that. What it does create are variant forms against which to test the text. But yes, to your written question, it is algorithmic. And if for instance, it gets crossed wires from, say, Cedra down the road, then it would generate forms maybe that aren't attested. So for instance, the tables I'm using actually said that in the Pa'al, sleb has an E grade vowel, but I looked on Cedra and it was an A grade vowel, so slob. And that has to be resolved. Either, you know, Cedra has some misinformation, or the other source that I was using has something the matter. But given that input, it should not over-generate forms.
Just one quick follow-up question. Can you do the opposite process?
The opposite process, meaning here's a form, what is it?
Yeah, what is the root? Yeah, I think.
Great question. That will be the next step when the generator is done. The bigger project is the analyzer. I have not started work on that because I'm still working on the generator.
Thank you.
So just for those of you who don't recognize Sargon's name, Sargon is as ancient as I am, and he was a co-author of the Unicode that you all rely on. So thank you, Sargon, for all your computing work.
Thank you,
Our
George.
next question comes from Atur. I just made allow to talk.
Okay, thank you very much, all of you. It really was impressive. I was really impressed, especially with the last one, because I was looking for you for a long time, so I found you. Yes, I was looking for you in all my life, I can tell you. Okay, yeah, how? That's question, good question. Because I was interested by learning those verbs. Yeah, when I went to seminary in Tehran in 1982, 83, so I started learning the conjugation of the verb, and it was always in my head. Okay, in 1983, 84, I'm telling you, when I was 22 years old, 21 years old, okay? So you did it, good job, great job. That's why I started working with the Martuma Odu dictionary, Simtud Lishanem. So I have typed all the book. So that's why I can help you. I can collaborate with you, whatever you need. I will be more than glad to give you whatever you need to do to finish the project. Because I already did it, it's already typed. It's typed and I am editing. I am almost letter A. So I have a few hundred pages left, but more than half is done. So good. So, and it is very good. That was really appreciated. So that's, you can all, if I can contact you via email, that will be a pleasure. Okay, and that will be, I want to really help you because you are doing what I was thinking years and years ago. So that's great. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Atur, and we would very much like your participation and also to cooperate with you. We are also in need of what you have. The fact that you typed Odo is very important. It is very useful for Cedra because now we only have images. We cannot search it, and also it will be nice if we can add it to the Simtho corpus. Whose name actually came from Odo's dictionary. We derived the name from Odo's dictionary. So, Atur, if you can leave us your contact information maybe in the chat, we can be in touch.
Yeah. One more I really appreciate for the models that you have done from transcribers. This is the first time we heard about the eScriptorium, but transcribers is great. The one that we are using, transcribers, you know, last 2 months ago, I gave 200 pages. I trained the model with 200 pages, and I got 2,000 pages in the result. And with the accuracy of 99%, more than 99%. So that was, oh my God, it was amazing.
Thank you. That was the work. That was the work of the group of last year. So we are really happy to see people using it, and that it's useful
Yeah,
for the wider public. Thank you, Ato.
I use it for one more thing before I finish it.
Go. It's fine, Ato.
I'm sorry. I also used it for the books of Paul Bejon, and I was able to do all of them. Before, the problem now with the transcripts is now that you have to pay money.
Yes.
It's expensive. Is there any way that we can not pay it? Because it costs money.
So this is the reason. This is the reason we are moving to eScriptorium, because Transcribers now is charging money. Yeah. So our team now is working on eScriptorium. We are not ready to share the models like we used to. I mean, we can share it with you, obviously, but to make an announcement about it, because the accuracy is not there yet, because you were happy with the accuracy of transcribers in the high 90s%. Once we get eScriptorium to that level, this is when we're going to put it on the website and make it available to everyone. But you can be you're like part of our team, so we can share it with you now, although it's not perfect, but we can help each other and work on it together.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else from our attendees who would like, you can just raise your hand. And meanwhile, since I don't have anybody, we will move to the panelists. And I don't know if Shelby, you want to call upon people, or folks just want to unmute and ask?
George, we had a few people who were attendees who added questions.
Yeah. Okay. And you want to call the names?
Yeah, Gigam. Let me see, where's the...
Okay, Gigam, go ahead. You can talk.
Thank you very much. I'm really impressed by what you have done. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So I'm a PhD student at Free University, and I'm doing my research on how Syriac translators derived L forms from Greek text. Like, how did they decide which verb goes as a L? And my question to Anton is, how do you distinguish between L and L when the forms are exactly the same? And how you make the program to recognize or to decide? That was my question. Just 2 insights, like whatever you have to share with us. Thank you.
So I was just writing a response to your question, but in particular, at present, the where the Ba'al and Ba'il differ only in the diacritics or the vocalization. The current program, which I really must stress is a work in progress, it generates both forms, but it just generates effectively the same consonantal form twice. Then when down the road the analyzer will seek against the forms, it will identify both of those as possibilities. In a vocalized text, it would actually have those and say, oh, I know it's this one and not this one. But for unvocalized texts, it would strip the final output of all vowels and diacritics and say, actually, both of these are possibilities. From there, and I haven't discussed this with Slavo, but the next logical step would be to say, compare it against a dictionary and see what is attested. And if only one is attested, then you can say conclusively, this is a pa'al because it shouldn't exist in the pa'al.
Let me also add here that the very important part of morphological analysis is the context. So ideally, we would have more corpus data that would allow us to evaluate the actual usage of a particular verb, but that's a whole lot more work that can be done at this first stage.
Again, I recognize that's a very complicated thing to make a specific distinction between pa'al and pe'al, because even now in general they say pa'al is the intensive form, but what intensity means is not really clear, because in Semitic languages that is intensity kind of, it goes to the many like plurality of objects and verbal transitivity and all those kinds of things that nobody has ever done in Syriac language related to pa'al. So it's something that that's what I'm trying to work on, to see how if I can come up with noticeable features of pa'al and say, based on this features, we can go back and say, in these cases where two pa'al and pe'al are possible, based on these features or characteristics of pa'al, we can say more sure that in this specific case, this should be pa'al instead of pe'al. That's kind of going backwards, working backwards. But I just wanted to know if you have any idea to share, how to make distinction, if you're also including some syntactic, working from syntax too, to define whether this is pa'al or pe'al. Anyway, if I made sense.
It makes absolute sense. I mean, the one thing that would be done in this case is looking at the valency of a particular verb. So not just syntax, not just semantics, but basically at what words and what word classes often occur with a particular verb. And that will help you to kind of recognize the context from which you can then derive the semantics of the verb. But that's something that I don't think it has ever been done for Syriac, and certainly hasn't been done for a lot of other languages. The only one that I'm aware of, well, there's Arabic and there's Hebrew, but definitely not other Semitic languages. So if somebody were to do that sort of work, that would be certainly a very worthwhile project, looking at verbal valency for Syriac verbs. And we have the corpus data for that now, so.
Yeah. Oh, well, another question. Right now, I'm going through the Eusebius ecclesiastical history on the Syriac digital text website, where you have, I think you put George, they got from you, Beth Mardutho, and there are some verbs I came across pa'al, and I don't know where did they get that information from, because the text online doesn't show any vocalization. How did you decide which verb this verb is pa'al, or where did you get that information?
So the on the corpus, what they do is they connect every string of characters to Cedra, and Cedra gives all the possibilities that are in Cedra. So if a form is pa'al only in Cedra, then that's what Cedra gives. If it's pa'al and the orthography is the same, then it returns that. So what you get on the corpus project is basically connecting a string to Sidra, and what Sidra is telling you about that string, all the possibilities. It is not giving you the actual tagging of that verb in that sentence in that context. That is something that you can choose. But what you see is not a morphological tagging of the text. It's only connecting to Sidra.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if a verb occurs only in PAL, the website gives us PAL.
Correct. And
Okay.
Sidra is not complete. So yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. The other question I had previously with OCR, is it possible to do OCR of text just using regular good quality but regular scanners, and use other by computer programs, or we need specific advanced technology? The reason I'm asking is I'm originally from Armenia, and I know some people who own very old Syriac texts. It's their own, and they are Syrians like for generations. And I want to get those texts and copy them, do OCR and so on. I don't know if I can do at home, or I need specific technology for digitizing those texts.
Would anybody doing the OCR like to answer that?
I think in principle, you should be able to, as long as you can get a scan of the pages that's readable to the human eye, then you should be able to run OCR on it. The big issue, say if you're using the current setup we have, would be likely, a home scanner will probably introduce more artifacts into the image, and that will probably cause more issues with the segmentation. It seems to be when there are little, artifacts or out of place marks on the page that causes the segmentation process to go a little crazy. And so that might require a little extra work, but in principle, I don't see why you wouldn't be able to do it. It might take more manual intervention, but it should be doable.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Who's next, Shelby?
I think, wait, Sargon had some other questions about OCR as well.
Go ahead, Sargon.
Yeah, I think you kind of answered it, the difference between how does it compare against the eScriptorium against Transcribus. At least let me just add more to what Arthur said. We got good results on the transcription of George Eastern and Strangilo's fonts, not necessarily maybe the Western or Soto font. So I was just asking, how does it fare against Transcribus?
I think in general we are having trouble with the Certo font. So the highest accuracy we have is Strangelo, then East Syriac, and then the lowest is Certo. I think it seems that it's just going to require more and more training. Now, as to Transcribus versus eScriptorium, I think it's going to be the same. We are facing the same problems now with eScriptorium. So it is the nature of the script, the fact that the Kof and the Beth are so close to each other, the youths and the noons, and the youth and the hay. In Estrangela, they are more unique, and the same thing. Even the Bejan editions, which with all the dots all over the place, which we thought are gonna ruin things, not really. The results we got were really good with the Eastern script, but the Western script is giving us hard time. Unfortunately, if you look at books published in Europe, and that's what we are doing, we are OCRing for the Sympho project, the European corpus, so to speak, especially 1800s, early 1900s. we were also surprised because we thought that most books will be in Estrangula, but that's not the case. True, the CSCO and the PO, the two major series from the early 20th century, decided to go with Estrangula, and that gives us the impression that most academic publications by Europeans are in Estrangula, but about more than 60% is actually in Certo, especially the 1800s period. That period is mostly in Sorto. So not having a good model in Sorto is a bit of a problem. It's slowing us a lot in terms of getting the texts into Syntho.
Yeah, I'm wondering, actually, I tried some handwritten text. It's horrible to read to begin with by human. But I was actually surprised and amazed, actually, that Transcribus was able to, based on an existing model, not necessarily that specific script, trained on an existing, let's say, a text that was printed. But I was surprised that I was it was actually able to figure it out, a few words, and I was able, like I said, it read the text better than human can read it. Of course, not with a lot of accuracy. That means there must be a way, maybe we can refine the model, and I'm questioning actually to the group, is there any interaction between, let's say, your group and that group, see if we can add some additional input to make, to enhance that learning from, and creating models from some specific characteristics to the Syriac scripts in all its forms that we can perhaps help, provide to the whoever is developing these two, the HDR they call them, I guess.
Yeah, and we had a similar experience where one of the students from last year's group decided just to scribble something on a piece of paper and to see if the OCR will do it, and it did it. It was quite accurate, if not 100%, in the high 90s. One thing also that we are thinking about once we're done with these, once we're happy with the models and they are in the high 90s, whether we can combine them all, and if you throw a text on it regardless of the script, whether it will get it, whether that will reduce the accuracy or not. I mean, logically it should reduce the accuracy, but these AI systems are so impressive that sometimes you do crazy things and they do a good job. So maybe when we even combine the three models together, but we don't know yet. That's on the to-do list.
Right. In fact, you're right. I did see one of the presentations somewhere on YouTube. They did say you want to be as strict as possible. Try to use one script and not deviate. But it seems because of the transfer learning, I think, feature potential because we wanted, I think someone showed an example, had a problems with mixed text. They had English like 184, it didn't recognize, or even Arabic actually in some cases, right? Arabic, Syriac. And so that would be a problem too. But I'm wondering if you throw at it, you're right, a model specifically trained for Arabic, let's say model specifically trained for one script. We have three scripts, different scripts in different incarnations, I guess. If you combine them, if they could provide a model, because just learning on specific, a subset of it, let's say English within, like Paul Bajan has a lot of English, right? Like page numbers and I think whatever, some footnotes maybe here and there. That throws it off. But it may not be enough for the model, for the software to learn. So wondering if you just strictly add three models, combine them and add them, and then you give it enough trained text from each individual language. That would be, anyway, that would be helpful. Anyway, my point is, it would be great if you maybe can connect with those developers, whoever they are, from some
Mhm.
university, if we can maybe work on this problem together.
And luckily with Transcribus, because it's becoming a formal company, it's difficult. But we are lucky with eScriptorium. We have direct access to the developers, to the AI people. They're not always available because they're busy, but at least we have access to that team, which is great. And in fact, we are trying to build an instance of it on a Beth Mardutho server, so that we could run things with command line arguments and start writing scripts to run things faster, because the uploading of images and downloading and clicking here and clicking there when you're talking about a huge project takes a long time. I always say the worst development of computing is the bloody mouse. We used to type commands faster than the CPU can process, but not anymore.
Well, it's coming back. It's coming back. You're right. You can always put a script in front and then say. Anyway, let's see. I also asked a question. I was wondering, I think when they were showing corrections, I think eScriptorium allows you to add corrections. And I'm wondering if that feeds into the model, and that would be actually a feature to learn as it goes along. I don't know if
you want to take that?
Yeah, so one of the biggest differences with using the eScriptorium is that there's no ability to train the models yourself. They do that, and then we use the most recent version of that. One thing I do like, sort of at a glance, talking about the accuracy of the models. I don't know exactly how they're computing the accuracy, but according to their recognition, they say that recognizing the characters is at 98%. It does not feel like that when you are working on it, but I think that's mostly related to the fact that the segmentation, I think, is where the real problem with the Certo script is because it's reporting an accuracy of about 73%. And the big thing is if you have words that have characters with low character heights, it always messes those up. Especially words that have all yods and hets and sublinear nun, final nun, and all that. It just doesn't recognize that. And so that really, if you get a whole line with a bunch of words that happen to have characters like that, it tanks the percentages. I think also, at least in theory, eScriptorium is supposed to be able to train that sort of the baselines and the masks that it draws, whereas Transcribus didn't. And so you're kind of stuck with that. So far, I haven't gotten an updated model on that. I'm not sure when we'll get another one. Hopefully that will have improved a lot. That's a big issue in terms of time, trying to correct all of those, because obviously it's not going to improve if you don't correct those models or with the polygons it draws, but that's extremely time consuming, especially if in a heavily voweled text. That was a problem for a while with Syriac, the Bedjan volumes in particular, trying to capture the swarms of dots. So hopefully it will get better because at least theoretically we're able to train that segmentation.
So just to add to that, so basically, Sargon, yes, the answer is when they do the corrections, it can go back into the model, but it's not automatic. We have to tell them, we're done with these pages. Can you please run it? And the model will be updated. Of course, once we install our own server, we can do the model, and once we learn how to run the commands to do the modeling, we probably can retrain. But at this point, we contact their team, the eScriptorium team, and we say, we're done correcting this book or that sets of books. Please rerun the learning model. Shelby, who's next?
The rest of the questions were from Yanir.
Yanir. Okay, go ahead, Yanir.
Yeah, hey. Okay, I wrote the questions, so you want I will read them again, or?
Yeah.
Just,
So
Did people read them? They want to answer them? I don't know.
maybe you can tell us to whom they're directed. You have the first one.
okay, I'll try to remember.
Yes. So I think this was during either Maroon or
I
just.
think that most of the questions about eScriptorium answered, but about the vowels, I didn't mention. Did you pay attention for that? So you mentioned that there are some complex situation with vowels. So you ignore them, you take them into the data set, or how did you tackle that issue?
And I also remember one of your questions related is, does it have any language modeling? So I'll answer that one first. So both eScriptorium and Transcribus and Tesseract also, that's the Google OCR system, the reason they succeeded with Syriac and Arabic, these connected languages, is when they said, forget that they are language. And it is only image processing. So it doesn't know anything about language. There's no lexicon, there is nothing. So it is all I think, image processing. Language comes in if you want to write post-processing tools to this, like what you guys are doing, part of speech tagging and whatnot, which then maybe if if you cannot find a solution for it, maybe that will trigger, did the OCR make a mistake? Am I looking at trying to analyze, like Anton is trying to analyze a word that is not really Syriac, and that can help maybe fix some of the OCR problems. As for the vowels, if you train it with vocalized text and you transcribe the vocalized text, you get that. If you take Bejan editions, which are full of that, some vocalizations, and you only train it with consonantal text, you will only get the consonantal result, and it will be accurate. So it depends on how you want to train it. And one thing we were thinking about is, shall we do two models, like one consonantal, one with vowels as well with dots, to see if we get better consonantal accuracy if we just do consonants? But it seems that it is so good, it's in the high 90s, that adding adding the dots is not ruining the consonants.
Oh, okay, thank you. And another question is for Ephraim about the work he presented. Did you use any text reuse method to find the text references in the? You mentioned that you try to figure out the resources that for liturgy and don't know, some religious text, or so there are methods for text reuse. Did you utilize something, or?
Yeah, I mean that as I mentioned that I'm working on constructing kind of a comprehensive liturgical corpus to include all the texts. So we are still facing this challenge in the liturgical text that we don't know exactly what do we have. So I know this is from my experience here in the university in Graz. So I have been working since years on the corpus for the anaphoras. So these are the liturgical texts like the Missale in the Latin tradition. And still we are having challenges, to have like a complete image about what text do we have in order to identify, for example, one fragment, which we can guess that it is belonging to the anaphoras, but we don't know to which one. So this is a big topic, and usually this is what's the role of liturgiologist, that to see that what took from the others and according to different linguistic varieties. Let's say this text is coming from Syriac, but originally was Sahidi Coptic or Greek, and etc. So that's why that it's important to understand this historiology of the liturgical text. We are still behind that, but for example, the corpus of Simtho is excellent to find some of the sources, if you are like you, of course, let's say with a patristics background. And I think that we will reach one day in a few years that when we have a complete textual corpora for all these things, and then we can have a better image. Now, the question is concerning to what we are doing now with Fadi. It was always a question, for how deep we should go. For example, let's say that we have a text that where we have the name of Ephraim, Jacob. Are we going also to encode the name of Ephraim, that he should belong to Saint Ephraim, and then to all the patristics names, and how deep we should go, let's say, with the geographical names? For example, if we have one line where it mentions Jerusalem and other places, so are we going to encode each word and then to find the reference for all of it? Perhaps this would be endless job to encode maybe one page. Maybe you need, let's say, 1 month. So the thing is I have decided to follow what's attributed to Einstein, to do the work as simple as possible, but not a bit simpler. And that's the thing. Let's finish what we have, to understand the concept of the liturgical days and the book. And then once we have, let's say, the great elements or the major ones, and then that they could be linked with the others, corpora that we are constructing from other books, I think this could be sufficient at this stage. Maybe stage 2, we can go as deep as possible.
Thank you.
Very good. Do we have any other questions? Sargon, is your hand still raised, or that's an old hand raised?
Oh, yeah, it was an old hand. You're
Old
right.
hand raised. Okay, all right.
But I have a couple of questions if you guys.
Yeah, if you have, go.
Yeah, I was curious if Anton, is your source code, did you upload it to GitHub, or is it available?
Great question. That thought had not even crossed my mind. I'm not being secretive. It really is just a work in progress, but I would be happy to do that.
Yeah, it would be good actually if you maybe let other people, maybe who knows, they can enhance it, do whatever.
Actually, yes, that's the whole idea. So everything will be open, and we actually want to create an API on the web where people could, well, first generate their forms and then analyze them. Hopefully, one of these
And
days.
just in general, we always say that in our workshops or webinars, anything that Beth Mardutho produces is open access. It's all done by students and postdocs and hardworking people, and nobody's getting a penny for it. So it belongs to the public.
Yeah, I have maybe a comment, or I don't know, an idea about the accuracy of the hand, or I guess for the lack of a better word, let's call it OCR. They also called ICR or HDR, depending on the script. Now, keep in mind, if we are looking for accuracy, like let's say as accurate as we want to get it, we may not get it. I mean, we may never be there. But for other purposes, for example, if you take a text and index it with all its, inaccuracies, it might be good enough actually for searching purposes. Just give you an example. I think some of the old, maybe some of you are aware, they probably subscribe a lot of these technical journals, and some of them are old. They predate digital age. And so they have them actually all imaged. So as an example, George ACM, some of their publications, prior to whatever that date, they don't have, it's not 100%, but they have images, and they use that actually to search. I mean, they took it and they created an OCR. And if you search for it, and they're not accurate actually, if you bring up the actual document, you'll get the actual document. But if you compare the text that they transcribed versus the actual, mind you, this is English, right, or Latin, and it's not 100% accurate. So it's just good enough just to bring you to find at least documents. So that might be another target for let's say inaccurate transcription of some old documents, for the purpose of searching and fast access.
That actually is a great point, because it kind of shows what all these techniques, all these technologies are all about. And a friend of mine once once described NLP or computational linguistics as the ultimate art of good enough. So we're never aiming for like 100% accuracy. We're just trying to get it as good as possible in small iterations. And like you said, even if something does 90% or 80% of the job that a human would have to do, like with morphological analysis, for example, then it's already an enormous improvement. So we're just basically trying to make all of these useful, trying to put together tools that can actually help the community to achieve their ultimate goals. And we never let the perfect be the enemy of the good, or in our case, good enough.
And Slavo and I have already been talking, Sargon, about the next version of Sympho to actually connect it to the images of the text as you suggested now, because let's say there is a sentence and the whole line, of course, is not all transcribed correctly, but you landed on a correct word in the middle of it. And if we show you the actual image of the text, as you just said, Sargon, then the fact that the rest of the line is not transcribed correctly is irrelevant, because now you are seeing the actual text. So this is our hope for the next version of Sympho.
Right. If those segments are made available as part of the image and as part of the metadata, that would be great. Exactly, because you can connect the transcribed line, because they do it actually in the software, right? If you scroll line by line, it will actually show you. So that means there is that relationship built. So we can have access to those metadata, which I'm pretty sure they do, that would, in their model, that would be great. As a consumable output.
Yeah. And the export does provide that, because you get from eScriptorium, also from Transcribus, you get an XML that gives you the polygon of the line, so you know where the actual line is in the image, and the corresponding transcription. So that's all doable. All right. So shall I go ahead with some concluding remarks, or we have some other business?
The only other question was something that Yanir put about TEI, if you wanted to ask that, Yanir.
Go ahead, Yanir.
It's okay. I asked.
It maybe was answered for him already.
It was answered. Okay. So this is actually just closing remarks to mostly to our attendees, because our panelists know this. If anybody amongst the people attending is a student and would like to apply to the fellowships, I'm just putting the link in the chat. So this is how every year you will apply. Usually the applications are due by the end of the year, or around January, February, and this is when we process the applications. And folks like Atur and others who are on the call here, you would like to participate with us, either you would like to collaborate, or if you would like to volunteer to work on any of these projects, you can connect with Shelby. Maybe Shelby, you can put your email so folks can contact you. And another way to be part of Beth Mardutho, and this is only for people who have full-time jobs, if you would like to become a member, I've just put the link for the membership to Beth Mardutho. That's how we support all these programs. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you to all the speakers, the supervisors. And before we say goodbye, does anybody else want to say anything from the screen? Okay. So thank you very much, everyone. And thank you to all the attendees, those who asked questions and all those who didn't as well. And be in touch with us if you would like to learn more. Thank you so much. Goodbye.